I woke beneath the sky I didn't know. Concrete shadows whisper soft and low. The city breathes in hollow tones, yet every street feels like my own. People pass, they never see. A stranger ghosted silently. The stairs were nice, I heard them say. She talks to things that passed away. They called me freak, they turned away, but I could feel what they couldn't say. The cold was kind, the dark was home. Among the dead unknown, I never fit the world of light. It burned my skin, it felt too bright. In silence I could always tell the living light, the dead they dwell. In shadows deep I find my name, in whispered winds that call and flame. The world is strange, the veil is thin. I feel the pulse beneath my skin. I'm not just human, never was. I breathe in silence, break the laws. They never understand my rule. A fucking astronaut, a soul. This is supernatural, this is me. Wandering through forgotten lanes where silence screams and memory wanes. I saw the signs, the secret halls where close men speak through hidden walls. The eyes are wide with veiled intent. They chase the dark with cold cement. 1,000 cults, 1,000 lies, and still I see through every guise. The world has rules I do not share. It stares at me with vacant glare. I move the limbs of those long gone. No breath, no soul, but still it's wrong. They dance for me, these hollow shells. Their sirens louder than church bells. I call them dolls, they bear no pain, and yet their presence soothes my brain. In shadows deep I find my name, in whispered winds that call and flame. The world is strange, the veil is thin. I feel the pulse beneath my skin. I'm not just human, never was. I breathe in silence, break the laws. They never understand my rule. A fucking astronaut, a soul. This is supernatural, this is me. I see the truth behind their eyes, the ghost of fear in their disguise. But when I sleep, the dream world shakes. Reality bends, dimension breaks. I don't remember who I was. A girl, a ghost, or something lost. But he's still here, my brother's face. The only constant in this place. In shadows deep I find my name. In whispered winds that call.
Hey everyone, and welcome.
The strange, the
Today, I'm excited to introduce you to a brand new story, Ambassadry of Death. This is the beginning of a supernatural tale set in a mysterious world where magic has always existed, hidden beneath the surface of a society on the edge of its industrial revolution. I hope you enjoy this journey into secrets, shadows, and the unseen forces that shape reality. Let the story begin. It was a starry night, the kind that poets long for and madmen curse, when the silver light of the full moon fell upon a lifeless corpse in the grim back streets of Nikra. In a world where the law of the strongest reigns supreme and shadows govern the fate of the weak, the sight of a dead body is nothing extraordinary. But what happened next defied every law known to man, magic, or God. The body twitched. The air around it shimmered as though reality itself were struggling to breathe. Then something stirred, a pulse, a flicker, and the soul that had long since faded into the abyss blazed back to life like a roaring inferno. It wasn't a spark of memory or a dying echo. It was a resurgence, violent and divine, unlike anything this world had ever witnessed. The soul did not merely return, it ignited. And as it grew in intensity, it sent ripples, first subtle, then seismic, through realms both physical and unseen. In the world of dreams, the first signs emerged. A dream bubble formed, expanding outward like a stone tossed into an ocean of slumber. Waves of energy pulsed from it, distorting entire swaths of the dream realm. Even the most gifted dream mages, masters of a magic known for its safety and subtlety, could do little but wander helplessly, confused by the sudden upheaval. But this was just the beginning. As the soul continued to flare, its presence breached even further, into metaphysical realms where ghosts roam and forgotten gods slumber. It burned so brightly that, had space not been warped in strange, ancient ways, it would have been visible across vast stretches of the spirit world. The soul shone like a second sun, its light bleeding through dimensions, until finally, it crossed the threshold and spilled into the waking world. The corpse, once a ruined husk, was now whole. And in that moment, the girl awakened. Her eyes opened slowly, dazed, and the first thing she noticed was the soft, unnatural glow radiating from her own body. She blinked, dazed, trying to grasp a memory. Only one thing floated to the surface: a name: Shira. She clutched her head, trying to remember, but all she found was darkness. Thick, crushing darkness that refused to part. Every thought was like dragging stones through mud, exhausting and fruitless. Part of her longed to lie down and rest again, to surrender to the void, but her instincts screamed otherwise. The metallic scent of blood, the tension in her limbs, the chaos around her, it all whispered one undeniable truth: she was still in danger. Where am I? Who am I? What just happened? Wasn't I dead? She muttered aloud as she slowly sat up. Her pouch, once filled with what little money she had, was gone. Her body felt unnaturally stiff, and the answer was all too obvious: she had lost too much blood to still be alive. Yet, she moved. She didn't need to be a healer or scholar to know this shouldn't be possible. What the hell am I? Some kind of zombie? Shira muttered, checking her body for clues. Scars, tattoos, anything. But all she found was dirt, dried blood, and grime. No answers, no identity. Damn it, what now? I'm broke and starving, she thought, staggering out of the alley where she had died. But the moment she stepped onto the street, she froze. What the hell? Did I travel through time? This can't be right. Where are the skyscrapers? Her eyes scanned the buildings, bricks, iron chimneys, belching black smoke. Everything screamed industrial revolution, not the modern age she somehow remembered. But why did she remember such things? None of it made sense. The era didn't fit. The world felt wrong, like she didn't belong, not just to the place, but to the fabric of this reality. My head. Why does it feel so empty? She whispered. But also, Shira, that name doesn't feel right either. If I'm not Shira, then what am I? The thought was interrupted when a carriage nearly collided with her. Watch where you're going, beggar, barked a man cloaked in black, his face drawn and impatient. Shira flinched, but the world seemed to ignore her. People passed by without a second glance. She stepped aside, trying to clear her head. Watching the crowd, rushed, grimy, unkind, she noticed the chimneys stretching like skeletal fingers into the sky. The ever-present stench of soot and garbage confirmed it. She was in a different time. But why? She racked her brain for answers. Any hint of knowledge, anything that explained why this world felt primitive, or why her instincts seemed so foreign. Nothing came. Only this. She was starving, broke, and definitely not your average zombie. I mean, do zombies even crave bread? Or meat? Or anything that isn't brains? She thought bitterly. Her skin wasn't rotting, she didn't look monstrous, and she hadn't felt the urge to kill anyone yet. Where is all this knowledge coming from? She asked herself, confused. Her stomach growled violently, forcing her to accept the obvious. She needed to eat. And with no money, she had only one option left: steal. How do I even do that? She muttered. Yet oddly enough, it didn't feel foreign. In fact, she felt like she'd done it before, as though her body remembered something she didn't. Muscle memory. But whose body was this, really? Questions for another time. She slipped into a side alley, letting instinct take over. She began something. It felt like magic, but twisted, newly awakened yet deeply familiar. She knew how it should work, and yet something inside her had changed. Wait, where did the light go? Wasn't I glowing when I woke up? She thought. Her form began to dissolve into shadow. Her outline flattened against the ground, stretching unnaturally, sliding beneath the feet of unsuspecting pedestrians. She moved with terrifying ease. The only difficulty came when she entered the sunlight. There, it became hard to move. But this magic was undeniably stronger than she remembered. Wait, remembered? What memory? It wasn't a clear image, just a sensation. A flash of how difficult it used to be to move in sunlight. Now, it was easier. Whatever this new body was, it had changed, and with it came unexpected perks. While in shadow form, the overpowering city stench vanished, and more than that, it felt warm, soothing, as though she were floating in velvet. I'm getting sleepy. I wish I could sleep inside a shadow. It's so cozy. I don't even need a bed. It's like being wrapped in cotton, she thought, eyes fluttering shut for a moment. But she quickly focused again. She had a goal.
Finding something to eat turns out to be far easier than she had expected. The real surprise, however, is the discovery that she can consume nourishment even in her shadow form. This strange revelation leads her back to the lingering question. What exactly am I now? Whatever transformation she's undergone, it has undeniably amplified her magical abilities beyond anything she once believed possible. Now, she can remain in a two-dimensional, or even three-dimensional, shadow state for what seems like an unlimited duration. While this doesn't directly increase her magical power, it vastly extends the time she can maintain her spells. In practical terms, that's a major improvement. So, given the multitude of advantages, she decides to remain a shadow for the time being. One major benefit of her shadow form is its formlessness. She has neither height nor width, allowing her to slip through even the smallest cracks and spaces. Another is the disconnection from her own physical body. The best way she can describe the sensation is that her body feels like it's suspended in a frozen, liquid, formless state. She's detached from physical sensations. No surfaces, no textures, no weight. Of course, there are some notable downsides. Shira quickly realizes that in direct sunlight, she tires at an alarming rate. Even more inconvenient is the fact that physical interaction becomes extremely difficult. To touch or move something, she must assume a sort of plasmatic form, like the superheated gas found in the sun, which demands a tremendous amount of focus and magical control. It turns out that shifting through sunlit spaces is far easier than physically influencing the world in this form. So, she drifts from one shadow to another, resting when fatigue sets in. There's still one problem. I can't smell anything or hear anything as a shadow, Shira muses as she settles into a shaded corner for rest. This particular shadow belongs to a striking man, approximately 1.78 meters tall, with sharp facial features and intense brown eyes. Strangely, she can sense no trace of magical energy within him. And yet, from the fragmented, instinctive memories that surface now and then, she knows there are people like her, individuals who possess magic. They're just incredibly rare. Good night, Shira thinks, curling up within the shadows of his shoes and trousers. Thankfully, she doesn't feel textures or surfaces anymore, otherwise, this might be an unpleasant experience. In her current state, it's more like folding and twisting herself in layers, a surreal, fluid distortion of her essence. It's not uncomfortable, just a little disorienting. But mentally, she can push that confusion aside. And with that, she surrenders to the warm embrace of sleep. In her dream, she finds herself standing in an endless expanse of green grass under an open sky. But something about the horizon is wrong. Thin, pulsing lines crisscross the sky like veins, delicate and glowing, forming a complex network that gives off the eerie impression of a structured, artificial system. The pulsing feels strangely familiar, as if her very soul recognizes it. What is this place? She wonders aloud. Data not found. System booting up. The voice is androgynous and bodiless, resonating from all directions at once. Who are you? Where am I? Shira asks, but receives no answer. What is your function? She demands, a deep, almost instinctive familiarity rising within her. Primary function, to collect, categorize, and organize data. Secondary function, to analyze and classify external objects. Tertiary function, to manage contracts and enforce payments. The voice is cold, mechanical, analytical. What do you mean by that? Shira presses, but the voice falls silent again. This strange exchange continues for several minutes. The voice only responds to specific triggers and often remains quiet for long stretches. It doesn't seem to possess any kind of ego or will, but its design is clearly meant to aid her. Eventually, after persistent questioning, the system reveals information about her newly acquired ability. It seems this system grants her the power to block spells that specifically target her, and more chillingly, the ability to enforce magical contracts. The explanation is unnerving. Once she activates this function, any agreement becomes magically binding the moment both parties consent. The only conditions are that the contract must be fully visible, clearly written or spoken, and both individuals must be completely sure of their intent. Once those criteria are met, the contract is virtually unbreakable. There appear to be no further limitations, at least none revealed. Logically, it's almost impossible to force someone to make such an agreement unknowingly, but even so, Shira can't help but marvel at the potential. Her mind races, imagining how many possibilities this power could unlock. Just as she's about to ask another question, she feels the familiar pull of consciousness, her dream dissolving, her awareness snapping back into the world of the living. Reluctantly, she wakes up.
It takes a moment before her senses return. When they do, all she perceives is darkness. An eerie sensation presses into the forefront of her awareness, the unnatural feeling of being folded. If Shira had to describe it, she would say it was as though her body had been creased like a sheet of paper, folded again and again, yet still retaining no height, no thickness, no volume. She was still nothing more than a two-dimensional shadow, despite the countless imaginary folds. Gradually, she unfurls. Her form stretches across the dusty warehouse floor, sliding silently along the cracked cement and curling up the nearby wall like liquid darkness. Perched high along the vertical surface, she surveys her surroundings. The silver light of the moon filters through grime-smeared windows, scattering reflections off floating dust particles. Shadows stretch across the warehouse, cast by long-forgotten crates and rusted shelving. Despite the cold air and silence, the place feels touched by something magical, a ghostly tranquility beneath the moon's pale glow. Shira pauses, clinging to the wall like a living silhouette, weightless and unbound. Her shadow body feels curiously free, almost joyful in its weightlessness. As she takes in the scene, her gaze falls on the man whose shadow she had claimed for rest. He now sits with several rough-looking men, cards in hand, grinning and laughing with the gruffness of criminals. Their voices echo faintly in the stillness. Why don't I feel threatened? Shira wonders, her mind unusually calm. Why do I feel so light? Then it dawns on her. It's the night. The overwhelming brightness of day had always made her feel confined, even vulnerable. But in this darkness, her powers flowed more freely, unchained. She's just about to leave when something she overhears brings her to a dead halt. When are we finally doing this job? My wallet's starving, says the man whose shadow had sheltered her. A second man, lean with sharp brown eyes and an unremarkable frame, glares at him, annoyed. He gestures toward the cards with a sigh. We've gone over this. The plan hasn't changed. We wait for her on her way home from school. That's the cleanest option. If it fails, we'll grab her another way. Jack, worst case, we kill her, but the client wants her alive, only dead if absolutely necessary. Shira narrows her invisible eyes. A kidnapping plot? A third voice, thin, fearful, breaks in. Do we really have to go through with this? She's Marquis Grindelwald's daughter. If the Blackhounds catch wind of this, we're all dead men walking. The daughter of Marquis Grindelwald. That name sounds important, Shira muses. And if I save the girl, well, that kind of favor could come with a generous reward. Not a bad opportunity. She's so deep in thought, she almost misses another realization. She can hear again. Her senses are adapting, more functional in the cover of night. Just then, one of the men, the smallest of the group, visibly tenses. A strange sensation creeps up his spine, like the weightless pressure of being watched. Slowly, his eyes sweep across the warehouse, searching the shadows for something, anything, that might explain the unease. But there is nothing visible. The presence grows stronger, like something breathing just behind his neck. It's a primal fear, whispering to him that something unseen stands too close, much too close. He considers saying something, a warning, but decides against it. He's still the newcomer in the group. They'd only mock him. Something wrong, little Tommy? Afraid to hold a gun in someone's face? Maybe you're just not cut out for this life. Taunts the largest of them, his sharp eyes piercing. That's not it, sir, Tom says, his voice uncertain. He doesn't know what it is, only that it's getting stronger. The sensation refuses to fade. It draws near, recoils, then creeps close again. A restless shadow circling just beyond the veil of his sanity. If he didn't know better, he'd say it felt like a ghost. And then, a breath, warm and sudden, brushes his shoulder. Tom spins around in a panic. Who's there? Show yourself! His voice cracks under the pressure of 3 sleepless hours and gnawing paranoia. But the darkness remains still. The warehouse holds its breath. Nothing answers. Nothing moves. And yet something is most certainly there. How the hell did that thug sense my presence? Shira wondered, genuinely confused. But as she studied the young man, it became clear he hadn't seen anything. At least, not truly. He stared at his own shadow for a heartbeat, then shook it off like a silly thought, and carried on as if nothing had happened. Shira silently followed him back to his room. The man collapsed into bed after what had likely been a long, chaotic night. Time passed in a hush, the moonlight creeping lazily across the walls. Then, with a groggy sigh, he reached down and pulled a thin, worn-out magazine from beneath the bed. Shira's eyes widened. The catalog was oddly familiar. Her heart skipped a beat as she saw the suggestively posed women printed across the pages, revealing just enough to make the intent of the content obvious. Still, a strange realization struck her. She felt like she had seen far more explicit things before, things far beyond the simplicity of the glossy photos. Honestly, I have to respect the guy. In a world without the internet, finding something like this is kind of impressive. I'm not sure I'd have the guts to go out and buy something like that myself. Then again, maybe I get why he needed it so badly. Stuff like this must be rare here. But even as the thought passed through her mind, Shira frowned. Something was wrong with that line of reasoning. A tingle stirred deep in her chest, an intrusive curiosity, uncomfortable and out of place in her current body. The thoughts brewing within her didn't match her form, and they raised troubling questions she didn't want to ask. To push them aside, she stretched her shadow-like form outward into the moonlight, letting her consciousness disperse. The chill of the night wind brushed past, rich with the scent of dirt, oil, and city grime. Darkness, silence, stillness. It felt right. The houses were cloaked in shadow, the world painted in dull gray hues under the bright, watching eye of the moon. The night felt like it belonged to her, as if she was made for this. Why does it feel like I'm weightless in the dark? She wondered. Maybe it's because the sunlight's no longer weakening me. My shadow form must thrive at night. She took in the world again, still and mysterious, but no longer terrifying. What should I even do first? I could just live like this. Hide during the day, move through shadows at night, but that doesn't feel right. I need to learn more about magic, about myself, and most of all, why I hear that voice in my head when I sleep. A response came, cold, mechanical, and sexless. It echoed from every direction, yet settled directly into her mind. Information incorrect. System is always active. Response occurs only when necessary. Shira blinked, startled. So this voice really is like those in anime. Wait, what's an anime? Why am I even using words I shouldn't know? Words that shouldn't mean anything to me. Her thoughts raced. Somehow she knew what was missing from this world. Music players, movies, even basic hygiene products. The realization made no sense, and the voice offered no further explanation. What am I supposed to do with all this? Why do I feel like I am Shira, and yet also that Shira died? It made her head ache. The contradiction was maddening. She grasped her temples with shadowy hands and let out a voiceless scream of pure frustration. God, this is so irritating. I don't feel like I belong in this world, not fully. And then there's my body. It's weak, and it's a woman's body. I can't be attracted to women, not in this time period. People here still believe same-sex love is something wrong. It's so stupid. She groaned in her shadow form, a muffled cry escaping her. But that's when she noticed it. She had changed. Something about her magic had evolved. Even in her shadow form, she could now smell, see, taste, and speak. Her senses were returning. And then, just for a heartbeat, she saw them. Transparent human shapes drifting through the air. Ghosts. But as soon as she blinked, they were gone. What was that? Did I just see ghosts? Alarmed and confused, Shira climbed to the roof of the warehouse and slowly began to reform into her physical body. Her heart thundered in her chest. Her breath quickened. God, this world is so bizarre. This situation is insane, she whispered as the wind tousled her hair. Her thoughts swirled like a storm in her mind, crashing against one another with growing intensity. And then her gaze fell downward, toward her own body. Her chest. The soft, round curves beneath her shirt. They drew her attention in a way she couldn't resist. Hesitantly, she brought her hands to her chest and touched herself, feeling both her breasts and her own hands in one surreal, confusing moment. Wow, they're so sensitive. It's nice. But weird, she murmured, voice barely above a whisper. Then she felt it, something shifting between her legs, a tingling warmth that grew quickly uncomfortable. She had to pee, and suddenly, she realized something else. Embarrassment burned through her. There were no modern amenities in this world. No toilets, no paper, no privacy. Wait, Amram, didn't I already have to go before? I've been here a whole day now. Maybe it's because of my or Shira's death. My body only now feels alive. Whatever. This needs to come out. And with that, Shira began looking around for a place where she could relieve herself. Uncertain, embarrassed, but determined. The journey had only just begun, but the questions were multiplying, and she was nowhere near ready for the answers. After several minutes of searching, Shira finally settles on a bush near the edge of the forest to relieve herself. One benefit of being a shadow was how effortlessly she could travel, slipping across surfaces like a whisper of smoke, especially at night. Once done, she returns to the rooftop of the warehouse, her shadow form stretching and curling like mist across the cold, cracked surfaces. I suppose I have to do something eventually, rescuing that noble child the criminals are after. It can't be the only thing I aim for. That alone won't lead to a comfortable life, not if people just ignore my warnings. It's not worth risking my existence for someone I don't even know. I'm not throwing myself into danger for anyone else's sake. These thoughts loop through her mind like a mantra as she stands motionless on the rooftop, as still as a statue under the moonlight. But her heart is anything but calm. Indecision claws at her with invisible fingers. She knows she can't keep agonizing over things she has no control over, yet her mind drifts back to the same unresolved questions, again and again. The air is cold, sharp, pure. It bites at her shadow body. She feels disconnected. To get what she wants, she'll need money, and working for it holds no appeal. That means others will have to do the work for her. The only problem is how to make that happen. Her eyes fall on the warehouse below, headquarters of a local gang, and something clicks. It would be so easy. So little effort. As long as her targets weren't magic users, they'd never even see her coming. But what if they do use magic? What if I run into someone I can't beat? That thought stops her for a moment, but then she shrugs mentally. I'll run. I'm good at that. A plan begins to form. Crude, but promising. All right, short-term goals. Find and rob small-time gangs, Robin Hood style. Except I keep the money. Stay alert for any chance to learn magic. And maybe, just maybe, I'll figure out how I came back from the dead. Or whatever it is that happened to me. She gazes out across the sleeping city. For a moment, there's only stillness. The wind dies, and the world seems to hold its breath. A quiet tension settles in her chest, like the hush before a storm. Something tugs at the edge of her mind, a forgotten truth, a waiting presence. It feels ghostly. Wait, could I always see ghosts, even as a child? Or was that just something Shira could do, ever since she was little? A chill prickles down her spine. Isn't that a sign of necromancers? Then why don't I feel any dark energy inside me? No twisted desire to steal life, no hunger for power, nothing. The absence is unsettling. Worse still is the flood of knowledge in her head, facts she remembers without remembering learning them. It's like someone gave her the answers but erased the path she took to reach them. And then, the voice. Confirmation. Data is indeed damaged. The system's voice is calm, mechanical, echoing from all directions within her mind. So, my memories really are damaged. They aren't missing. They've been broken. Confirmed. She clenches her fists, staring at the night sky. Why am I even worried about money? She thinks suddenly. Why stress at all? I could just make a contract. Offer someone something in exchange for magic or wealth. Simple. But even as the thought takes form, unease follows it. Something in her gut tells her it won't be that easy. Still, it's a plan, more than she had before. She'd save that noble girl from whatever those criminals were planning: robbery, kidnapping, maybe even murder. And if the opportunity arose, she'd forge a contract. Shira crouched low, her sharp eyes scanning the building below. A final sweep, nothing moved. No breath, no whisper, not even the shift of a restless sleeper. She extended her senses like thin wires, brushing over the presence of the slumbering criminals below. Satisfied that the entire hideout lay dormant, she allowed herself to slip silently from the rooftop. Her form stretched into shadow, thin and elongated, like smoke in the moonlight, as she slithered down the side of the warehouse. When her feet touched the grass, she merged with the darkness, becoming nearly invisible to even the most watchful eye. The night was clear. Cold air drifted through the branches above her, and a thin mist curled along the ground. Without a destination in mind, she began to walk. Or perhaps drift would have been a more fitting word. Her steps were soft and swift, more gliding than striding, as if even gravity gave her some leeway. The sleeping city of Nikra surrounded her, dimly lit streets, the occasional distant bark of a dog, and the ever-present hum of unseen life. She moved fast. Her body blurred occasionally into wisps of darkness that twined around alley walls or flickered through empty intersections. She let her legs guide her, surrendering conscious direction. She avoided the brighter parts of the city, where warmth gathered and people might still be awake. Most importantly, she steered clear of any place that hummed with the strange, static buzz of magic. She could sense it. Blurry, like looking through wet glass, but unmistakable. The prickle of arcane tension. At least 4 places in the city burned with it. Places wrapped in protective spells, old enchantments, or active magical use. Shira didn't need conflict. Not tonight. Her feet eventually led her to a wrought iron gate, rusted and half swallowed by ivy. Beyond it lay the graveyard, ancient and sprawling, its edges fading into fog. She stepped inside, and the shadows around her danced in greeting. They wrapped around her like a thick, fluffy veil of black fog, coiling up her legs and across her back, twirling gently at her shoulders like a living cloak. The feeling was pleasant, comforting even. Here, in this place of quiet rot and forgotten names, she felt at ease. The dampness of the moss beneath her boots gave off a rich, earthy scent, mixing with the sweeter, fading aroma of flowers left on graves by mourning hands. She inhaled deeply. This was peace. Without really deciding to, she wandered toward the morgue building at the rear of the cemetery grounds. It was a squat, gray structure of steel and stone, sealed shut by a reinforced metal door. But even before she reached it, she felt the tug. Something inside. Something dead. Her fingers brushed the cold handle. She didn't pull it. She only laid her hand on the smooth, unyielding surface. And in that instant, the memory came. She remembered Shira, not the self she was now, but the one she had been. The orphan. The quiet girl in the shadows of the chapel, always staring out the windows when others played, always drawn to the place where bodies were kept before burial. She had always felt closer to the dead than the living. And then it clicked. It wasn't the soul inside her that longed for silence and death's company. It was the body itself. This body. This life of Shira's, with all its strange instincts and haunted past, the ability to see spirits, the ease with which she moved through cemeteries, the comfort she found in shadow. These weren't new. They had always been part of her. "Since I was a child," she whispered aloud, her voice nearly swallowed by the night. "I could talk to the dead." Shira's hand lingered on the cold steel for a moment longer. Then, without hesitation, she tried to open the door. It didn't budge. The lock was firm, industrial grade, designed to keep out looters, the curious, or grieving family members who couldn't accept the finality of death. It would have stopped a normal person. But Shira was not a normal person. Her body dissolved, her flesh and bones unweaving into smoky tendrils. A billowing, 3-dimensional silhouette of shadow replaced her physical form, soft and liquid and utterly silent. Darkness poured through the gaps in the doorframe, curling inward like water drawn into thirsty earth. She slithered through the narrow lock, past the mechanism, and pooled on the cold tile floor inside. A second later, she reassembled. Limbs, ribs, skin, clothes, everything reforming with eerie precision. "Thank the void my clothes come with me," She muttered under her breath. If I had to reappear naked every time, I'd go insane. The thought made her shiver, but that stray observation led her down a path of realization. If my magic can turn clothes into shadow, she paused, eyes narrowing slightly. Then it doesn't just work on me. I can turn objects into shadow, inorganic matter, non-living things. Her gaze flicked toward the row of silent, gleaming compartments along the wall. That means... Her voice trailed off, but her thoughts continued. I could do the same to corpses, to the dead. Maybe not the soul, but the body. The idea stirred something inside her, a cold flame, a strange excitement. She began to walk. The morgue was quiet, colder than the cemetery outside. Each step echoed softly, absorbed by steel and tile and the stillness of death. She wandered between the metal slabs and drawers. Some were closed. Others bore pale outlines beneath thin, white sheets. She didn't flinch. In fact, she felt almost exhilarated. There was something deeply peaceful in the presence of these still forms. No lies, no voices, no heat, only quiet truth and the weight of finality. Her eyes slid from one corpse to another, observing the details. A missing arm here. A stitched wound there. Old, young, male, female. No judgment, no sound. Minutes passed, or hours, she couldn't say, as she wandered through this temple of silence. Then her gaze stopped on one body, partially uncovered. A man, mid-30s, perhaps once wealthy. Expensive watch still on his wrist. Neatly combed hair, no visible injuries. Something about him called to her. She didn't question it. Instead, she let the impulse take hold. She let the magic stir. It began deep in her core just beneath her ribs, then flowed outward in a slow burning wave. A pressure behind her eyes.
A buzz in her fingertips. Her hands tingled with cold fire as the shadows inside her responded. Let's see what happens. She reached out and placed her hand on the corpse's chest. The reaction was instant. A crackle of energy leapt from her fingers into the dead flesh. Not lightning, nothing visible, but she felt it. A jolt, like ice and fire running through her palm. A thread connecting her to him, alive and full of impossible potential. And then, just as suddenly, it snapped. She gasped and jerked her hand back. What was that? Her breath came short. Her fingers still tingled, numb from the surge.
As she asks herself that question, only one answer surfaces in her mind. It was wild magic, and that alone is impressive. Wild magic is a broad term for any kind of magic that either an individual or the majority of people cannot understand. That means wild magic lies in the eye of the beholder. It's entirely possible that she understands what her own magic is, but to everyone else, it would still be considered wild magic. Wow, that's just incredibly fascinating, Shira thinks, beaming with joy at the discovery of something new. When she places her hand back onto the corpse, she feels the connection between her and the body. Then, something strange happens. The man's body feels like an extension of her own. His eyes spring open, and suddenly, she sees through them. It's disorienting, yet deeply impressive. The only problem is that she must maintain physical contact to control the body. How interesting. It doesn't seem like I'm using any kind of negative energy. I wonder what my system thinks about this. System, analyze this corpse now. Shira commands silently while staring at the body. Analysis complete. No abnormal properties or energies detected. Unknown new magic identified. New magic branch detected. Would you like to give this new magic a name? The system's voice speaks within her mind. What do you mean by unknown magic, or a new branch of magic? Shira asks mentally. New magic means that no other person possesses this kind of magic. As the name implies, it is a completely new form of magic, replies the system in the same emotionless tone. You sound more natural. What's going on with you, she wonders. Notification. That is an illusion. The system can only draw conclusions from existing information. It cannot become more human, as it does not possess a soul. What are you then, if not intelligent? She asks herself as she removes her hand from the corpse. The system is a fusion of high-tier rune magic from data corrupted, and an AI from the 23rd century, the system states. Are you saying I've traveled through time? She asks, but the system remains silent. No matter what she says or thinks, nothing else happens. The silence is unnerving, but Shira decides she can ask more questions later. Still, she finds it odd that she knows what an AI is. That's not something she should understand in a world like this, where computers don't even exist. This only strengthens the suspicion that at least a part of her isn't entirely from this world, or this time. What should I even do with the corpse? I don't want to steal a body, that would raise too many unnecessary questions, but then, how else can I get corpses? As she melts back into the man's shadow, her form shifts, this time, into a three-dimensional shadow. Standing there, she realizes there's a much easier way to obtain dead bodies without having to kill anyone. One option is to find people in this city who won't be missed. Another is to experiment with animal corpses. Yes, that should do for now, she thinks, slipping back through the door and out into the night. The moon hangs high in the sky. It's a beautiful night. The only question now is, where can she find a dead animal? Shira wanders in search of one. Whether it's her connection to death or pure luck, she can't say, but after about 12 minutes, she stumbles upon the corpse of a raven. Kneeling in her human form, she examines it. The raven hasn't begun to rot and appears freshly dead. Moved by a sudden idea, she tries to strengthen her control over this body through her shadow. She imagines a rope of darkness connecting her to the raven. Something does happen, but not quite what she expected. It's not a shadowy tether, nor anything visible. It's telepathic. A mental link forms between her and the raven. It feels like this bird is nothing more than a puppet, or a marionette, she thinks. Then it would only make sense to name this magic puppet Master Magic. She begins to move the bird's body. As she tests its wings, something deep within her stirs, something left behind in the raven's being. Flying feels so natural. Surprised, she wonders why this is so easy, why it feels so familiar as she flaps the bird's wings and lifts into the air. Where's the learning curve, she wonders as she soars above the cemetery. But then she suddenly notices something critical: she cannot effectively control both the bird and her own body at the same time. The mental strain is unbearable. A piercing headache builds as she tries to move both. Shit. Shira thinks as her human body, still standing motionless on the ground, suddenly begins to lose balance. Her knees give way, her sense of grounding slips. The more focus she pours into flying, the more her awareness of her original body crumbles. And then, it topples. Just before her human body can crash onto the ground, she makes a quick decision. Her form blurs, flattens, and becomes a two-dimensional shadow.
Damn it, how am I supposed to move two bodies at the same time? This is just confusing, Shira thought, frustration creeping in as she guided the raven to land. Perched in the bird's shadow, she let herself sink into its form. The wind tugged gently at its feathers, and for a brief moment, a longing bloomed in her chest. How wonderful it would be to fly on her own. Not through possession or manipulation, but by her own will. But reality wasn't so kind. Direct flight wasn't a simple matter. Even now, she barely had full control over the raven. Coordinating two consciousnesses was already a strain. Still, an idea stirred in her mind. If she could fold herself into his form, no, not just overlay herself, but truly become part of him, could she then achieve unity? It would be like a ghost possessing a body, only without the malice, without the decay of negative energy. This was something else. A subtler magic. Shira opened the raven's beak from within and allowed her two-dimensional shadow form to unfurl. Slowly, she expanded, rising into her three-dimensional state as she slipped inside the raven's body, as though folding herself into its hollow. Immediately, she felt it. An alien sensation. Like her presence was too much, too dense. She had to suppress herself, dilute her essence just to fit. It was as though she had to become less human, less alive. She had to let go. Whoa, this is amazing, she thought as she extended her wings, and gave them an experimental flap. But just then, a sharp crack echoed through the air. For a split second, the world vanished into black. And then, light. Shira stood back on solid ground, human once more, confused and dazed. At her feet, the raven lay motionless, its body ruptured. What the just happened? She murmured, staring at the remains. From that small, failed experiment, she realized something. Something within her rejected the idea of fully merging with anything physically weaker than a human. It wasn't just resistance. It was rejection. Rebellion. The system in her mind, the one that usually whispered guidance, remained silent. Still, Shira wouldn't stop now. In this city, finding corpses was disturbingly easy. No one asked questions when a body vanished from a back alley. No one batted an eye when a few stray dogs turned up dead. This world was stained and filthy, and that made things simpler. She began experimenting at night. First with dead animals she found discarded in the gutters. Then, with people, recently dead, buried hastily or abandoned. Graveyards became laboratories. Streets became hunting grounds. And through it all, she learned. She didn't need to be the killer. It didn't matter how the life ended, only that the body remained. With each attempt, she refined her technique. She learned she could possess humans and larger animals like a ghost. But one limitation always remained constant, the unbearable strain of moving more than one body at a time. On the third night since her return to this world, she saw them. Group, 4 men and 3 women, dressed in black suits and white masks, combing the area where the first Shira had died. Shira sipped a warm drink in a cafe nestled in the upper district, the wealthier part of town. The Raven, now under her control, was already en route to observe. Her training had revealed something useful. Her magic had no real distance limit. That allowed her to maintain possession of faraway forms. The only downside was the headache, intense, sharp, and punishing, if she moved 2 bodies too fast or tried to split her focus too broadly. Still, for reconnaissance, the trade-off was more than worth it. From the Raven's ears, no, her ears now, she listened as the group inspected the scene. "Are you sure this is the place the Bureau picked up the pulse?" Mariko asked a woman's voice. "I'm not," the man replied coldly. "But we're going to find out. And don't use my name. We're on a mission, Vice Captain." And in that instant, something cracked open in Shira's mind. The name, the voice. It was as if a floodgate burst. Memories, long buried, spilled through. A storm of images, emotions, fragments of a life forgotten. That name, that voice, it has to be him. It has to be my Mariko. Brother, Shira whispered to herself, her voice barely audible. Not a cry. Not a revelation. Just a truth, quietly surfacing. Some cafe patrons turned to look. A young girl, finely dressed and alone, murmuring to no one. Brows furrowed. Questions danced in their eyes. What was a child doing here, all alone? But Shira didn't see them anymore. Her thoughts were a tide, sweeping her away. The memories returned in a wave. Why had she come to this city in the first place? The hope, the fragile hope, that the Bureau for the Supernatural might help her. But she had been robbed. Stabbed. She had died, just moments before reaching her destination. I died, and then, something happened. But what? Why did I come back? The wave receded, leaving her breathless. Her head throbbed, as though it might split open. But Shira knew one thing for certain now. She wasn't finished. Not yet. Translated and embellished as Shira's thoughts drift through the fog of confusion, something begins to pulse beneath Mariko's black uniform, a sudden vibration, growing warmer by the second. The sensation is unmistakable. It's exactly what happened just over a day and a half ago. And it can only mean one thing. His heart skips a beat. Hope ignites like a spark in his chest. She's alive. She has to be. How is that possible? He wonders, eyes narrowing. Why did her presence explode through the detection grid yesterday? What in the world happened to her? His mind drifts back to how this strange case began. It was supposed to be a routine day at the Paranormal Bureau. Obscura, when everything descended into chaos. Every alarm in the facility went off at once. A wave of unknown energy surged through the city, violent and overwhelming, like a silent scream in the dark. Tracing the source, however, proved nearly impossible. All they could confirm was that the energy originated somewhere in the city, and that it lasted no longer than 45 seconds before vanishing completely. That alone would have been puzzling enough. But what truly disturbed Mariko was the artifact, the Wayseeker, tucked against his skin, a device he'd poured years and a small fortune into creating. It had trembled for all 45 seconds during the surge, unwavering in its reaction. And that could mean only one thing. The source of that energy was Shira, his sister, missing for over 10 years. If she was in this city, or had been, there could be no turning away from this case. Not now. A strange sensation tugs him back to the present, an eerie sense of being watched. His eyes sweep across the filthy alley, stopping on the dark stain where blood had once soaked into concrete. Then he sees it, a raven perched on a nearby rooftop. It's too still, too silent. Its feathers too perfectly black. Its eyes shimmer with unnatural intelligence, and the magic that radiates from it feels familiar. Suddenly, the Wayseeker flares to life beneath his uniform, its trembling intensifying. No way could she be connected to the raven, he thinks, watching as the bird spreads its wings and takes off into the sky. But it doesn't flee, it hovers nearby, watching him with sharp, knowing eyes. Shira, hidden within the raven's shadow, watches as well. She's surprised that Mariko managed to acquire a functioning Wayseeker, but something seems off. It's not pointing toward her real body. It's just pulsing randomly, with no direction. Why isn't it working? She thinks, frowning. She tries to recall what the Wayseeker is supposed to do. If someone holds an object linked to me, like blood, it should lead them directly to my body. But he looks confused. That means it's not doing what it should. She takes a long sip of her sweetened coffee, letting the taste center her thoughts. Then, with graceful calm, she stands, pays with stolen money, and steps out into the street. Something's shielding me. Maybe my current state interferes with the Wayseeker. I need to understand how, and why. She vanishes into a narrow alley, slipping like a shadow between the buildings. Unbeknownst to her, a group of men has begun following, subtle, practiced, silent. But when they turn the corner, she's gone. At the same time, a ribbon of darkness stretches across rooftops and through windows. 4 kilometers away, a raven still observing Mariko is suddenly engulfed in shadow. 0.4 seconds later, Shira is inside. She unfurls the raven's wings, now fully one with the creature once more. Good, it doesn't expire when I use this method, she muses, relishing the cool air flowing across her feathers. As an undead creature, or rather, a puppet animated by her will, the raven offers several benefits. It doesn't need to breathe. It doesn't grow tired. And as long as Shira's presence inhabits it, she too is free from those limitations. Still, the raven's body has its constraints. Muscles, even in death, can only be pushed so far before they tear or rupture. She has to be careful not to destroy her vessel from overuse. Despite this, it's an ideal surveillance tool. She keeps Mariko in her sights, watching from above. But a new obstacle arises. The building Mariko enters to file his report is sealed with layers of protective magic. No undead bird would go unnoticed. There's no way to follow without raising alarm. Forget it. I can come back later. First, I need to warn the girl. Those criminals have their sights on her. Shira turns away, flapping hard against the heavy air. It doesn't take long to find what she needs. She scratches out a simple message, enough to serve as a warning. As the afternoon darkens under thick storm clouds, she soars once more, cloak of feathers blending with the sky. The hidden sun, cloaked in gray, seems to invigorate her, as if the shadows themselves lend her strength. After sweeping through the city, she locates the opulent estate of the rich girl, the one marked for danger. Now, she must be cautious. Magical traps, detection wards, any one of them could reveal or harm her. But after a half hour of circling and probing, she finds nothing. No enchantments. No surveillance magic. She's cautious, yes, but there's a fine line between caution and obsession. So she steels herself and lands gracefully on the girl's windowsill. With a sharp tap-tap, she raps her beak against the glass.
And that's it for today's video. I truly hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and feel free to share this channel with your friends who might enjoy dark fantasy and tales of the unknown. This was the story Ambassador of Death. I've been toying with the idea of calling it The Puppeteer instead, but I'm not quite sure yet. Let me know in the comments which title you think fits best. For now, we'll stick with Ambassador of Death. If you're curious to hear more from this world of shadows, secrets, and supernatural mysteries, you can click the playlist on the right. On the left, you'll find a link to my latest upload. And right at the top center, you'll see the button to visit my channel directly. Thanks again for watching. Until next time, take care and goodbye.